Listen, I'm genuinely a little scared. I'm scared of this political cycle. I'm scared of the things that are happening in the country. And I'm just scared of what responsibility I have to do anything about it. But even more than those things specifically, I'm scared to be involved in politics on my space and on my YouTube channel. It's so interesting to see that there are Christians involved in, both talking about theology and apologetics and, Christian content, and then also talking about politics. I really feel like it's another step out there. And I'm not qualified to give you factual, strict, exact political information, but I am interested in discussing matters of opinion where possible. And I've been convicted about the fact that Christians aren't voting, and Christians like me are scared to talk about politics in the open space, and I just don't think that's right. So the point of this video is that I feel convicted about sitting on the bench, and you should feel convicted about sitting on the bench too, because these decisions that are political decisions are going to determine the outcome of so many things that are important. Now, no matter who wins the election, Christians can trust God and his sovereign control no matter what. But the question goes a little bit beyond that as to, should Christians vote? There's a super surprising amount of Christians who aren't willing to vote. And so I'm willing to vote, but I'm too scared to talk about it on my social platform. So I'm crossing those gaps here today. And I'm saying I should talk about politics when necessary, when it goes too far, when it affects Christianity, when it involves faith, when it's necessary. Political conversations should be able to be had. I've mentioned a little bit of the, critiques of the liberal mainline denominations in Christianity, and I've decided that I'm not going to be afraid to, say right out what that means. We need to not be scared to condemn sin and condemn wickedness, especially within the church. The one set of people that we are permitted to judge as Christians is other Christians. We're not supposed to judge the world because God judges the world, but other Christians, we have to work together to determine the right things and to determine the right way to be. That's the point of the edification of your brethren in Christ who are around you in church and all of those kind of things. So then beyond that, beyond needing to be involved, needing to encourage one another, needing to actually, have the openness and the willingness to talk about these things, the second part of the conversation is voting. And the essential reason that I needed to make this video is because, I have no audience. I'm not, talking to a broad, wide group of people, but the truth of the matter is, we as Christians need to vote. We need to vote. If we don't vote, then we're not using a God-given ability that we have, a God-given right that we have in this free country to affect decision-making. And I think that in itself is a form of sloth. It's a form of laziness. It's a form of not being involved because of fear, because of anxiety, because of things that Jesus told us not to have. And saying that as a Christian, I can't endorse either of these political parties, well, that's not sensical. Jesus didn't endorse Caesar when he said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's not an endorsement. Jesus would have agreed that Caesar was living in sin, that the Romans were in sin, but the Rome was the government of the time, and at no point are the disciples or apostles of Christ discouraged from participating in the politics of the time. Now, they didn't have access in the ruling class to those sorts of things, but if they had a country like we have in America today, where your decision can affect potential future decisions that your country and your nation makes, I think that he would convict us to be involved, certainly more involved than we seem willing to be. So I'm not going to tell you which political candidate you should espouse, but there's a number of things that Christians should be voting for, and they should not be saying this political candidate is so bad. I think both of our options are bad. It was the same case in 2020, and it was the same case in 2016. Both of our candidates are not they're not Christians. They're not Christ candidates. Okay, maybe some more than others, and you can get into that specifically, but neither of these people are walking around preaching the gospel. So I think that the conversation then needs to be more specific. It needs to be Christians can vote even when the candidate doesn't match perfectly with their values, because you're voting for policies, not a person. First of all, I think everybody kind of knows that, but they still get so hung up. They're like, oh, Trump is just so awful. Oh, Kamala is just so awful. I can't, as a Christian, they go against my values just by being their person. But they're the only two options. It's not like you have another option. Realistically, we're not called to be stupid. It's not a matter of your moral high ground. It's not being on the moral high ground for you to say, I'm so righteous that I can't bring myself to vote for this unrighteous person. I think that's just wrong. I just think that that's wrong. Realistically, you can't vote for an independent candidate. You can't write down Jesus on your ballot and throw it in, because that person is not going to get elected. You have a reality here, which is that there's two primary political candidates. You could predict with 99% certitude that it's going to be one of them as the next president of the United States. It's not going to be any of these independent candidates. You're not going to start a movement. You could try to start a movement, but you're not going to start a movement where you upset the current political order. That's not anywhere close to happening. If it was, this would be a different conversation, but that's not close to happening at this time. So you have to make a decision. It says, I have to choose between two of these political candidates, and it's going to be based off of their policies, based off of the things that I think they will change, and how that will affect Christians, how that will affect my morals and ethics based on my faith-based worldview. So you pick the political party that aligns with your faith-based worldview. Like I said, maybe this is me expressing still a little bit of fear, but I'm not going to tell you specifically which candidate I'm voting for, but I'm saying that you should not be scared to vote for one candidate or the other. And you should also not pick one candidate because you think they're a better person than the other. It should be based off of policy decision. There should be 5 or so policies that are specifically important to Christians. Like, we care a lot about how we're being financially affected. Obviously, I care about how I'm being financially affected and how things are difficult for myself and my family. And you care about, wars, and you care about all of these things, but there's specific Christian things. We're talking about saving lives. We're talking about morality. We're talking about what would Jesus want done? What kinds of things would Jesus want done? Those are the things that we should be voting for. So you vote for your morals. You vote for whichever candidate has the best ability to represent that. It's not expected to be perfect. It's not anything like that. Okay? And if the candidate running was a Satanist, if you had 2 Satanists running versus each other, maybe then you could say, I'm not going to participate in this election because they're straight up, against Christianity. But I don't think that either of the candidates outrightly express that view. And so at this point, we have to discern, and we have to choose, and we have to vote. And that's just the reality of the idea that we need to get Christians off the bench. I'm not going to go into the crazy, this is the last election, and this is the craziest thing that will ever happen, and we're living in the end times. I know everybody wants to say all those kind of things. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I do think that there's things for Christians to be concerned about, and there's reasons for Christians to participate, especially at this time and place. A lot of Christians around the space right now are interested in reconquering the West with Christianity, and they're not going to do it by sitting on the bench. It's not going to happen by sitting on the bench and being really nice to everybody. I know that that's the idea, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be nice to everybody, but you have to do a little bit more than that. I think Christians are called to be involved, and it's not right to sit on the sidelines. Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar. Do what you can with what you have. We have to do the best that we can with what we have. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. If you don't like lemonade, if it's the only thing you can make and you're parched, you're going to make lemonade and you're going to drink it. So that's where I'm at. I just felt that this was an applicable time to make this, and it's going to be a big upcoming election season. If I get specific questions, maybe that are more related to philosophy that sort of weigh into politics, I'll make more videos on the subject matter. But at this point, I don't have a plan to do so. I just wanted to make this one specifically. And so from here, that is all I have. So I would say vote. We need to get Christians voting and stop Christians from being afraid to vote. This has been Creedon's Questions. Thank you for your time.